Am I the a-hole for cutting off my wife from assets? Technically, my wife and I are still married. We have been separated for almost a year, but neither of us has filed for divorce yet. Last spring, when COVID first got bad, both of my adult children lost their jobs and couldn't make rent. So I offered for them to stay with us until they got back on their feet. This caused a lot of stress for everyone involved. I work 45 to 50 hours a week in a manufacturing job, while my wife has not worked in nearly a decade. This was completely her choice, as she has never liked working. Who does? And she wanted to pursue making income on Etsy and other similar sites. So when my son and daughter came to stay with us, our house became much more crowded than usual. Since my wife stays at home all day, she felt that my children were invading her space and wanted them out pretty much immediately. She felt I was enabling them by letting them come stay with us, and that we should let them sink or swim on their own. I told her that I couldn't let my children suffer when I was in a position to help. After only a few weeks, crap hit the fan. My wife had blown up at both my son and daughter because she felt they weren't pulling their weight in our house. She started giving them chore lists and would get angry when all of the things weren't done. My kids were both looking for work and dealing with employment offices, and doing housework took a backseat to those things. Rightfully so in my mind. I came home from work one day to my wife screaming like a banshee at my son. When I walked in, my wife immediately turned her ire on me and told me that if I didn't kick my kids out right away, then she was leaving. So I told her my kids were staying, and she packed her stuff and called her sister to pick her up. Wife also doesn't drive. Since then, we have barely spoken. She won't answer my calls and will respond to pretty much every text with, "Unless your kids are gone, we have nothing to talk about." Mind you, my daughter moved out during the winter after finding a new job, and my son has been working part-time for 6 months while looking for full-time work and saving money to move out. My wife didn't even tell me when her dad passed away earlier this year. I had to find out on Facebook. When I tried to call her, she wouldn't answer and ignored all my texts too. Since it has become painfully obvious to me that this relationship is over, I decided to finally file for divorce. However, as soon as my wife was served the papers, she flipped out on me. She is pissed that I cut off her access to our shared checking account, and pissed that she will no longer have access to health insurance through my employer. She has called me Nahal more times than I can count, and her siblings have joined the choir on that refrain now too. I do feel bad that this is going to make her life more difficult, but I no longer feel it is my obligation to provide for her when she clearly wants nothing to do with me. Now for the top comments. Not Dayhal. She left you. It makes sense that she stops benefiting from your income when she makes the choice to remove you from her life. What was it the wife said? Sink or swim on their own? Guess now she can show them how it's done. So not weighing on the a-hole at the moment. But the first thing that came to mind is whether you consulted a lawyer about whether what you are doing is legal. Because if you've only just filed for divorce, but it isn't settled yet, then presumably the separation of marital assets hasn't been established in court yet. So unilaterally, cutting off access to accounts seems like something you should run by a lawyer. And I mean an actual lawyer, not like r/legal advice. It probably isn't legal to cut her off from a joint account, even assuming the bank would allow it to happen without permission from both account holders. However, there is nothing to stop him from transferring his direct deposits or checks from his work to another account or bank, assuming that this is under US law. Not a-hole, but you should know that depending on how long you were married, you might owe her a division of that account and ongoing alimony since she was financially dependent for so long. Everyone sucks here. You need to go through the proper steps for a divorce. Can't just unilaterally decide to take away her access to shared assets. She's an a-hole for trying to kick out your kids. Though I'm wondering if she was the one who was having to do all the extra cooking and cleaning you claim they were too busy to do. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for saying things my wife gives our infant in front of our child's doctor? My wife and I have a 2-month-old daughter. For the past month, she's been feeding our baby mashed potatoes, applesauce, sweet tea, assorted fruit juices, and other things. The last time we went to the doctor, our pediatrician told us not to give her anything but formula until she was between 4 to 6 months old. My wife does not care and says she knows best for our child and our doctor isn't a parent. Our daughter is always constipated and screams for hours at night that my wife says is colic. I've asked her numerous times to stop feeding our infant table food and go back to giving her formula. She's only feeding her 1 or 2 bottles of formula while I'm at work. The other morning, she was cooking scrambled eggs and oatmeal, and I was off work, so I started to make our daughter a bottle and feed her. And she stopped me and told me not to fill her up with that, and she wanted her to eat her oatmeal first. I fed her the bottle anyway after a huge argument. Well, baby had a doctor's appointment, and my wife was talking about colic and screaming fits. And when the doctor asked what she was feeding her, she only said formula, nothing else. I was angry because she lied and told the pediatrician every single thing that she had been giving her. And the doctor strongly recommended her to stop, and that she was causing stomach upset, and more than likely the reason for all her stomach issues. Instead of being apologetic for this, my wife is mad at me and told me I ratted her out to the doctor, and that she doesn't have to listen to her, and that is only a recommendation, and that I made her look like a bad parent. I tell her what a selfish little twat she was being, and now she wants me to go stay with my parents until she forgives me and asks me to come home. Am I the a-hole here? Maybe I shouldn't have flown mad at her and said some things I did. Maybe I should apologize to my wife. Not the a-hole. What your wife is doing to your daughter can cause long-term damage to her digestive system. Not giving her formula can also contribute to her losing weight and not growing. I would suggest you talk to your pediatrician away from your wife for her to get a full picture. It's abuse. Edit. Because this is at the top, OP, I urge you to supervise every feeding. Your daughter can choke to death having food. She's not ready for anything but milk. This is extremely serious. I would take your wife up on staying with your parents. Take the baby too, because your wife is being reckless and dangerous with her. She's not fit to parent her, and this is abuse. Full stop. If she lied to a doctor, what is she lying to you about? Not the a-hole. And although Opie was 100% correct to do what he did for his daughter's sake, now he has to worry what his wife will do when he's not aware/looking. This is bad news, because wife has decided to double down on her poor judgments by being angry with Opie. So she asks the doctor about the problem and then expects some magical cure when she lies about what she's feeding the baby? And also wants to reject the medical advice because she's what? An expert? Do what's right for your child based on the advice of doctors. Your wife sounds way off base on this one. Not the a-hole. Added to add, your wife knows she's wrong. Saying you ratted her out is telling to me. Not sure why she's putting the health of your child at risk to be the obstinate parent. She lies about what she's feeding the baby. I can kind of see her messed up logic. She's sure that the doctor is wrong about feeding baby only formula. If she tells the truth, the doctor will tell her to stop feeding the baby adult food. If she lies, the doctor will have to find the real reason the baby is hurting. She's betting her child's life on her being right and the doctor being wrong. Not the a-hole, but something is going on with your wife. Your doctor is absolutely right your daughter can't digest the food she has been given. Not only can it cause damage, but your daughter is literally screaming in pain from trying to digest it. I'm not a psychologist, but I have had a baby before. The first months postpartum are very hard, and sometimes postpartum depression comes out in many ways. Paranoia, thinking everyone is out to get you and your baby. Raged at feeling that anyone else knows more than you, and other strange thoughts. The fact that your wife is lying to the doctor, knowing your daughter's pain and constipation is coming from being fed table food and juice, is alarming. I would try and talk to her about why she thinks the food is better for the baby. Does she have something against formula? But I also think she needs someone to talk to and sort out her feelings to see if postpartum depression is something she's struggling with and how to help right away. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my boyfriend it's his fault he got into an accident? My boyfriend is a very aggressive driver. Whenever we're on the road, he's always bragging about how he's able to outmaneuver the traffic ahead. And just how does he achieve this? By driving very radically and cutting in front of other drivers, or swerving across 4 lanes at once without signaling, or taking random, unnecessary, bumpy shortcut roads that save 2 minutes at most. There's been so many close calls, especially at night, that I prefer to just shut my eyes and grip the door handle for most of the journey because his driving makes me so anxious. It's worth noting that he doesn't necessarily speed, so the close calls would have been minor scrapes due to him cutting in people's lanes if they had happened. So he's not putting our lives in danger, just the car at risk of some very avoidable fender benders. I've complained about it so many times, and he says that the way he drives is necessary because there's always crazy traffic, so it's either drive like that or crawl. So tonight, he was driving and there was some traffic as usual, but our turn was coming up on the right, so I expected him to just wait in the lane we were in. Instead, he swerved across a few lanes just to inch a little further and a little quicker and then swerved back into the lane we were supposed to be in to make the turn, all in the space of a few minutes. While doing this, another car bumped into him and chipped the paint on his car, but there was no dent. He was livid and blaming the driver, but the driver wasn't having it since he was clearly at fault. He expected me to back him up, but I didn't say a word the whole time because I was very irritated myself. I had told him to just be patient, but as usual, he didn't listen. I waited in the car while he settled with the other driver, and when he got back, he was upset with me for not having his back. I told him that the other driver wasn't at fault, and he should have just waited. He said that the only reason we were out tonight was because I wanted to pick something up. So I was being extremely ungrateful since he was doing me a favor, and this wouldn't have happened if we weren't on the road tonight because of me. To which I said, it wouldn't have happened if you weren't driving like a freaking lunatic. We rode back home in silence, and he hasn't spoken to me since. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. He isn't putting lives in danger. He absolutely freaking is. He's putting the lives of every single person on the road, including pedestrians on the sidewalk, in danger. Edit. I didn't give judgment on this. Everyone sucks here for not chewing him out on the first time you saw him drive like this. Grow a backbone. Car are fast-moving, thin pieces of metal. You can get folded and killed on a residential road. People don't respect that. Info. You were still dating this guy, why exactly? Look at her post history. They've only been together 6 months, and already she seems to be constantly annoyed with him and is putting her in danger every time he drives. Just why? People need to stop dating people they don't like. Yeesh. Not the a-hole for not backing him. You're the a-hole for attempting to justify and minimize his dangerous and deadly actions. He will kill or severely injure another person or himself, destroying them and their families' lives. He doesn't need to exceed a speed limit to kill someone else, himself, or you. Someone will die eventually. It's just luck no one has yet. Fair enough. I guess I never considered the possibility of serious injury because I always thought you had to be speeding to crash. But I now understand the danger it poses to myself and other people. We'll definitely have a serious conversation with him. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend she isn't allowed to use my eggs because she wastes them? Hello. I will make this short. Me and my girlfriend, both 25, have been fighting over eggs recently. There is an egg crisis in my country. A lot of hens have died from a bird flu. This has made eggs a rarity in our local supermarket, and they are both hard to get by and more expensive. You're lucky if you are able to buy a packet of eggs before they run out. We eat a lot of egg in our household and share our finances, but I do all the grocery shopping now during the pandemic. My girlfriend only eats the egg yolk, puts it on her noodles, and throws away the egg whites. I like the whites and use them both in baking and in normal cooking. I keep telling her that I think it's unfair she throws away the whites, and I've asked her to at least save the whites in the fridge so that I can use it later. I get upset that she's wasting edible parts of a food that's hard to come by, and even if the egg crisis wasn't in action, I think she's being upsetting in the way she just throws away edible food like that. I told her that I will start to buy eggs from my own savings, and she won't be allowed to take from my egg box unless she saves the whites. She freaked out at me since she wants to use the egg yolks for her noodles. She says I'm being an a-hole and petty about this since it's just eggs. I don't know if she's right or not, because yes, it's just eggs. But since it's just eggs, she could just as well not throw them away like that when it causes such a disturbance to our relationship. This is very upsetting to me. And I want to know if I'm overreacting and am being an a-hole for making her save the whites or not have any yolks. Not the a-hole. It's super weird that she refuses to just save the egg whites for you. Would it be a difficult thing at all? The answer definitely isn't both of you buying separate packs of eggs. Well, it might be the answer if it helps her realize they're hard to get. Also, if Opie regularly can't have any because the girlfriend has thrown out a bit of Opie's happy to use, then why should they keep missing out when they're the one buying the eggs? Not Dayhall. It's barely any extra effort for her to put the whites that she has already separated from the yolk into a bowl in the fridge for later use. She's literally already done the hardest part. It is very selfish and mind-boggling behavior on her end. The fact that there's a shortage of eggs just makes it worse. Not Dayhall. What is her reason for not putting the whites back in the fridge for you to use? You said you'd be okay with that. It would be just as easy for her to save them as it is to throw them away. She's being ridiculous about it. She says it's just egg and that I'm being childish. I think she doesn't want to put the whites in the fridge because it's easier to throw them in the sink.